understand that Susan is becoming a new inquirer with us, and I think Irene is going to give us a little bit of background.
Okay. We're very happy to have you with us. We have a manual that has been worked on and has been updated, and we will be studying that during this time.
I went on your website and I've read it about compassionate care and trusting in the providence of God, but maybe, I don't know if you could sort of elaborate or just a bit deeper understanding or what that kind of looks like in your life of living that out.
Okay, well.
There is definitely a sense of sharing gifts back and forth, and so part of my wanting to join is this desire to sort of in some ways practice my faith. And so what I see too is sort of a partnership. Because I'm sharing in their spirituality, which maybe involve some prayer time or contemplation, but also involves action through their different ministries.
In the mid-'80s, there was a movement developing in religious communities to formalize a relationship between sisters and lay people, and we call that, we created then the Providence Associates. Those people are men and women, and they don't have to be Catholic, who are attracted by our charism, which we now put in a nutshell as serving with compassion, trusting in providence, walking in hope.
We're preparing lay people to carry on our legacy. When you look at our history, nearly all of the founders had lay people helping them, whether it was the Daughters of Charity in France, whether it was Emily Gamlin. She invited lay people to assist her in her work in Montreal, and Sister Catherine McKinley, she was in favor of that too.
They come, where there's a one-year inquiry, where they join a group and begin to get a feel for who the sisters are, if the charism of the sisters matches what's inside of them. And there is a 2-year candidacy phase where they get more involved in the community. There's an expectation that they will make a retreat once a year and that they will participate in the educational weekend that we have to the extent that they are able.
The life of Emily Gamlin pictured for me the importance of listening for those daily calls to serve and then acting upon them. When we go into our small groups, there are 2 questions. How can we, in our lives, emulate this selfless call to serve God in His poor? We can also reflect on this question: who are the poor in today's world?
From the perspective of the sisters, we're asking the associates to be involved in our mission and in our charism and spirituality.
What I think is happening in society is that people are longing for a place to share their faith, to explore their spirituality, and they want to do that in community.
As one young woman who was an inquirer, she said, I have peers from work and friends, but there's nobody I can share my faith with, really, or nobody who's really interested in that kind of thing. And she said, I'm looking for a group that I could do that with. So she started with us, and often that's the case.
I'm just remembering when I first met Sister Irene, I was seeing her for direction, and it was through that I heard about trusting in the providence of God, and I knew that I had always done that. It was almost as if the charism was a part of who I was.
Not only trusting in God's care of us, but being God's care in the world. And so when you come to be an associate, you collaborate with us in being God's care for the world. Whether that's someone in your family, whether it's your neighbor, whether it's the poor in the city, whether it's the homeless, whether it's the planet, you know, or the earth around us. We must take that responsibility. Does that, do you understand that?
Yeah, no, it does, and it does sort of resonate. I'm assuming that associates can volunteer on some of your committees or get involved in these different ministries that you do.
We really encourage that.
Like myself, I do volunteer Meals on Wheels deliver the food for the elderly in their apartment buildings. Yeah. And sometimes myself, I go and bring a Eucharist to a couple that they are at home, that they're not able to go out for Mass.
So that's one thing that is calling me to maybe become an associate, because you need to have that community. You know, you give support, but you also receive support to keep going, and that's certainly something I admire about the sisters.
We really recommend that every candidate has a spiritual director to help discern whether this is a call from God to this specific congregation, because all the congregation, or many of the congregations, have associates, and so there has to be a fit between the charism of this congregation and what is within them. As associates, we commit for 1 year. This is the commitment said in the context of evening prayer, and it's a very beautiful ceremony. And we say, my God, wishing to commit myself to you as a Providence associate, in compassionate service to the poor, promise to live out my baptismal call in relationship with the Sisters of Providence of St. Vincent de Paul for 1 year. I promise to witness to the providence of God.
We're asking them to be involved in our mission and in our charism and spirituality. They bring to us often a practicality and a common sense approach because they're living it in today's world. They're living it in their families. They're living it in their workplace. We need them and they need us.